Tasha had always been invisible to the world. The kind of girl who lived on the edges, in the shadows where no one asked questions. A product of a broken home, no father, a mother who was rarely around, and an empty stomach that had taught her to take whatever she could get, whenever she could. Her days were spent skipping school, hanging out with the wrong crowd, stealing from local stores, and getting into trouble. But it was the thrill of getting away with it all that kept her going. She wasn't just a petty thief. She was a master at it. And she had her eyes set on something big tonight. Walking down the street with a group of her friends, Tasha's eyes landed on a man standing outside a trendy coffee shop. He was tall, dressed in an expensive suit, and had an aura of importance around him. Tasha didn't know who he was, nor did she care. What mattered was that his wallet was hanging loosely from his pocket, and his back was turned. "Yo, Tasha, check it out," her friend, Kira, whispered with a grin. "That's an easy target. He's distracted." Without a word, Tasha slipped through the crowd, quick as a shadow. She reached out, feeling the smooth leather of the wallet as she snatched it with practiced precision. She stepped back into the crowd, heart racing with adrenaline, but feeling the familiar rush. "Got it," she muttered to herself, clutching the wallet. But as she turned to walk away, something strange happened. The man turned around suddenly, locking eyes with her. There was something in his gaze, something that made her stomach drop. He didn't seem angry. He didn't even seem surprised. Instead, there was a knowing look, as if he was expecting her. "Hey, I think you dropped something," the man called out, his voice calm, not the confrontation she expected. Tasha froze, the wallet feeling like 100 pounds in her hand. Then, without warning, her friends, seeing the tension, started moving toward her, ready to back her up. They had done it before, intimidating their way out of sticky situations. "What's going on here, man?" Kira stepped forward, trying to sound tough. "You got a problem with my girl?" The man didn't flinch. Instead, he took a step closer, still with that same calm demeanor. "My name is Elon Musk," he said quietly, "and I don't think you know who I am, but I think you should." Tasha didn't understand. She had never heard of him, never seen his face before. He was just some guy who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the way he spoke, the way he looked at her, it was different. The world was suddenly too small, and she felt cornered, trapped in a moment she couldn't escape. Kira and the others were ready to escalate things, but Tasha, for the first time in a long while, hesitated. She wasn't sure why. Maybe it was because of the way Elon didn't flinch, or the way he seemed to look right through her, past all the bravado and into her soul. He held up his hand. "Listen, I don't want to fight. But you should be more careful with the choices you make. There's a lot more at stake here than just a wallet." Tasha's heart raced. She looked around. Her friends were still standing close, waiting for her to make a move. But this time, something inside her didn't feel right. The tension in the air was suffocating. "What's going on here, Tasha?" Kira asked, voice low, suspicious. Tasha glanced back at Elon. His presence was overwhelming, and for the first time in her life, she felt small. His eyes were piercing, his calm tone unnerving. "I don't want your money," Elon said, his voice even. "I want to offer you something better." Tasha was confused. She had no idea what he was talking about. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a card. "This is for you, but you need to make a choice. You can walk away right now and keep going down this path you're on, or you can come with me and let me show you a different way." Tasha stared at the card, the words, Musk Enterprises, printed in bold letters. Tasha's life had just collided with the unimaginable. Will she take the chance Elon offered her, or will she continue down the path she knows too well? What would you do in her place? Take a moment and comment below. What choices do you think she'll make? Would you have accepted Elon's offer, or would you have walked away? Let's hear your thoughts. Stay tuned for the next chapter, where Tasha's world begins to change in ways she never imagined. The card sat heavy in Tasha's hand. Musk Enterprises stared up at her, the bold letters feeling like a challenge. She could hear the muffled voices of her friends behind her, unsure of what to do. Kira was the first to speak. "What the hell is this, Tasha? Who does this guy think he is, handing you a business card like you're some kind of charity case?" Kira scoffed, clearly uncomfortable with the strange turn of events. Tasha didn't answer immediately. Her fingers curled around the card, the edges digging into her skin. Her heart was racing, but not from fear of being caught, as she would have expected. It was something different, an unfamiliar sensation, one that felt like hope, but also like a trap. Elon stood in front of her, the calm in his eyes never wavering. There was no arrogance, no superiority, just a quiet confidence, like he already knew what she was going through, what she had been through. "I'm not trying to make you feel small," he said, his voice unhurried, almost fatherly. "But you need to understand something. What you're doing right now, it's a dead end. And I think you know that, deep down." Tasha's eyes flickered to the card again. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice low, defensive. He shook his head slightly. "I don't want anything from you, Tasha. I want you to see a different way of life. A way out." "Out?" she repeated, bitterness creeping into her voice. "Out of what? My life? My reality? Where I don't have to beg anyone for shit, and I take what I want." For the first time, Elon's expression softened, as though he understood the pain behind her words. "You don't have to keep living like this. The world offers more than just survival. It offers opportunity. I can show you that." Tasha felt a snarl building in her chest. "You think I'm just some lost cause that needs saving?" she spat, her voice sharp. "You have no idea what I've been through. You don't know me." "You're right," Elon said calmly. "I don't know you, but I see you, and I know you've been through hell. That's why I'm offering you something different. A chance." Her mind was a whirlwind. She had never had anyone talk to her like this, like she had value. Her whole life had been about scraping by, taking whatever she could get, never stopping long enough to wonder if there was something more. The thought of having a choice, having options, was a foreign concept. It was too much to process. "You're serious about this?" she finally asked, staring at him with skepticism. "You want me to work for you or something? Just like that?" Elon nodded slowly. "No promises, no handouts. But if you want to change, if you want a real shot, I can help you. You'd be amazed at what you can do when you stop running from your past and start facing it." There was a long pause. Tasha stood there, still clutching the card in her hand. Her friends were whispering behind her, clearly agitated. They didn't understand what was going on, and to be honest, neither did she. But something about the way Elon spoke, it wasn't like anything she'd ever heard. It wasn't like the empty words of the people who'd given up on her, or the threats of the system she'd been taught to despise. "You're not the first person to try to get me to change," she said, her voice quieter now. "But nothing's ever worked. Why should I believe you?" "Because I've been where you are," Elon said, stepping closer, his eyes intense but still kind. "I didn't start with everything. Hell, I started with less than most people. But I never gave up on what I could become. And neither should you." Tasha hesitated. This was different. She could feel it. This wasn't some wealthy guy trying to save her just because it made him feel good about himself. There was no pity in his eyes, just a quiet expectation. "All right," she said, surprising herself. "I'll take it. I'll take the card." Elon's lips curved into a small, approving smile. "Good choice. You're going to have to work for it, but you won't regret it." Tasha didn't know what she was getting into, but for the first time in her life, she felt like she had a shot at something better. For the first time, she felt like she could choose her future instead of just reacting to whatever life threw at her. Tasha has taken the first step towards something unimaginable, a chance to turn her life around. But the road ahead won't be easy. Will she rise to the challenge or fall back into old habits? The real question now is, does she have what it takes to change? What do you think will happen next? Leave a comment below and let us know what you think Tasha's next move should be. Will she embrace the opportunity Elon offered, or will she stumble along the way? Don't miss the next chapter where Tasha begins her journey into the unknown. Tasha couldn't sleep. The card lay on her nightstand, taunting her, reminding her that today was the day. She had agreed to meet Elon Musk, but what exactly that meant, she still didn't know. All night, her mind raced with doubts, fears, and possibilities. Was this some kind of trap? Or was this the lifeline she had been desperately searching for? The sun had barely risen when she got out of bed. Her room was small, cramped with the remnants of her past, dirty clothes, empty bottles, and the faint smell of stale air. She didn't want to face the truth, but she couldn't avoid it anymore. Everything around her screamed failure. Everything except that damn card. She dressed quickly, slipping on a faded hoodie and jeans that had seen better days. No time to worry about how she looked. Today was about something bigger. She grabbed the card and stuffed it into her pocket, then headed out the door. The streets felt different today. The usual noise, the hustle of life, the blur of people rushing to work, it all felt like a distant hum in her ears. For the first time, she wasn't rushing just to get by. She was heading somewhere that could change everything. When she arrived at the address on the card, it wasn't what she expected. The building was sleek, modern, and intimidating in its vastness. She stood at the entrance for a moment, feeling small. Her pulse quickened. She'd never stepped into a place like this before, but she had already made the choice. No turning back now. Inside, the atmosphere was entirely different from the street outside, quiet, organized, polished. People in suits moved efficiently, their eyes focused on their tasks. It felt like a world apart from the one she knew. She approached the receptionist, her throat dry. "I'm here to see Elon Musk." The receptionist looked at her over the top of her glasses, skeptical for a moment. "And you are?" "Tasha," she said, her voice firm despite the nervousness creeping in. "I have an appointment with him." The receptionist didn't ask any more questions. She simply nodded and gestured for Tasha to sit in a waiting area. It was surreal, sitting there among the polished leather chairs, the glass walls, the perfect lighting. It didn't feel like Tasha belonged here. She wasn't used to this kind of world. Minutes stretched into an hour. Tasha's leg bounced restlessly, her thoughts turning darker. She was wasting time. What was she even doing here? The door opened, and a woman in a sharp suit walked in, looking at Tasha. "Tasha?" she asked, her voice calm but authoritative. "Yeah." Tasha stood, unsure of what to expect. "Mr. Musk is ready to see you," the woman said, giving her a brief, almost unreadable look. "Follow me." They walked down a corridor, and with each step, Tasha's nerves grew more jagged. She was so out of place, so out of her depth, but she couldn't back out now. She had already come this far. When they reached the door at the end of the hall, the woman knocked softly before opening it. Inside, Elon Musk stood by a large desk, his back to her. He turned slowly, a smile playing on his lips. "You came," he said simply, his voice warm. "I came," Tasha replied, forcing a small smile of her own. Elon gestured for her to sit, and she did, still unsure of what to expect. He sat across from her, the room quiet for a moment. "So," he began, leaning forward slightly, "let's get to the real reason you're here." Tasha swallowed, suddenly feeling the weight of the moment. "I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. I don't even know what you want from me." "I don't want anything from you, Tasha," Elon said, his gaze never leaving her. "I see potential in you, something that you might not even see in yourself yet. But potential means nothing if you don't act on it. So, let's start with a test." Tasha raised an eyebrow. "A test?" "Yes," Elon replied. "It's a simple challenge. There's an opportunity I've created for you to prove that you can change. It's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be something that happens overnight. But if you're serious about turning your life around, you'll take this test. Fail, and you walk away. Succeed, and we start building something new." Tasha felt her heart thudding in her chest. She wasn't prepared for this. A test? What kind of test was he talking about? She had no idea, but the stakes were higher than anything she had ever faced before. "What's the test?" she asked, her voice steady even though her insides were anything but. Elon smiled slightly, a glimmer of respect in his eyes. "I need you to prove that you can be trustworthy, reliable, and capable of handling responsibility. You have to show that you can take initiative without expecting a handout. It's simple. If you fail to meet the expectations, I won't be able to help you. But if you succeed, you'll prove to yourself that you're more than just what you've been." Tasha stared at him, processing the weight of his words. Trustworthy? Responsible? She wasn't sure she even knew how to be those things. But something in Elon's eyes made her feel like she had no choice. Like she had to take this step. "All right," she said after a long pause. "I'm in. What's the first step?" Tasha has agreed to the challenge, but the real test is only just beginning. Can she prove herself capable of change? Or will the weight of her past pull her down? The path ahead is uncertain, but one thing is clear. She's about to face the hardest challenge of her life. What do you think Tasha should do next? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think her first test will be? Don't miss the next chapter, where Tasha faces her first real challenge in this new, uncertain world. Tasha's mind raced as she sat across from Elon Musk. His words echoed in her ears: trustworthy, reliable, responsible. The weight of his challenge pressed down on her shoulders. She had come this far, but could she really turn her life around? Could she prove to someone like Elon Musk that she was capable of doing something better with her life? She hadn't grown up with responsibilities. In fact, she'd spent most of her life running from them. From a young age, the streets were her refuge, the only place where she could escape the weight of her past. But here, in this pristine office with its polished floors and sleek glass walls, the world was different. And Elon, with all his wealth and power, wasn't just offering her a handout. He was offering something else, a chance. "So," Tasha said, trying to steady her breath, "what's this test? What exactly do I need to do?" Elon didn't respond right away. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and regarded her silently for a moment. The pause felt like a test in itself, one more hurdle before she could even begin. Finally, he spoke. "You need to make a decision. Right now. A real one. This test is not about me. It's about you. I'm giving you an opportunity to prove you can handle responsibility, but the choice is yours. There's an event coming up, something that could change the trajectory of your life. I want you to organize it, from start to finish." Tasha blinked, stunned. "You want me to organize an event? Are you serious?" Elon's gaze didn't waver. "Yes, you'll work with my team, but the responsibility for the entire event is on you. It's a major presentation, and it's critical. It will test your ability to manage, to make decisions under pressure, and to follow through on what you say you'll do. If you fail, you'll walk away, and I'll forget I ever met you." Tasha's heart raced. An event? She barely even knew how to organize her own life, let alone something as important as this. Her past was littered with poor decisions and lost opportunities. She had never had a chance to prove herself, not to anyone, not even to herself. But there was something in her that sparked at the thought of proving Elon wrong, of showing the world that she was more than the mess she'd been. "I can't promise I know what I'm doing," she said quietly, though determination began to creep into her voice. "But I'll give it my best shot." Elon nodded, a hint of approval in his expression. "That's all I ask for. Now go. Meet with the team, figure out the details, and make it happen. I'll be here to help if you need guidance, but ultimately, this is your show. Your time to shine, Tasha. Don't waste it." Tasha stood up slowly, her hands trembling but her mind clear. She had no idea how she was going to pull this off. The weight of the challenge was daunting, but this was it. This was her chance to change her life. Later that afternoon, Tasha found herself in a conference room, surrounded by a team of people she had never met before. They were calm, confident, and professional, speaking in the language of business she barely understood. At first, they looked at her with skepticism, unsure of what this young woman, this girl from the streets, could possibly bring to the table. But Tasha didn't have time to let their doubts sink in. She had a job to do. "All right," she said, trying to project authority, even though her nerves were threatening to take over. "We've got this. We're going to pull this off. Let's get started." The room fell silent. Tasha looked around the table, making eye contact with each of them, willing herself to believe she could do this. She had to. For herself. For Elon. For everything that could come next. The next few days were a blur of activity. There were meetings, calls, emails, and decisions to be made. Decisions that would affect the entire event. She found herself struggling at times, doubting her abilities, but each time she faltered, she thought of Elon's words. "If you fail, you'll walk away. That fear of failure was her fuel, pushing her forward when all she wanted to do was quit. As the days passed, something unexpected started to happen. The team began to trust her. They started looking to her for direction, respecting her decisions. She was no longer the girl who stole wallets and ran from her problems. She was becoming someone different, someone capable of leading, someone who could handle the pressure. And then came the day of the event. The venue was set, the guests were arriving, and Tasha stood backstage, watching the chaos unfold before her eyes. She could feel the tension in her chest, but she pushed it aside. This was it, the moment she had been working toward. Her entire future was at stake. "Everything's ready," one of the team members said, coming up to her. "We just need your final approval." Tasha nodded, taking a deep breath. She had done it. The event was ready to go. All she had to do now was deliver. As the event unfolded, Tasha watched from the sidelines, her heart pounding in her chest. The presentation was flawless. The guests were engaged. The team was working together like a well-oiled machine. For the first time in her life, Tasha felt the weight of responsibility as something empowering, not burdensome. When the final presentation was over, Elon Musk approached her. There was no applause, no grand fanfare, just a simple nod of approval. "You did it," he said, a small smile curling at the corner of his mouth. "You passed the test." Tasha felt her breath catch in her throat. She had done it. She had actually done it. Tasha has taken the first step toward changing her life. But the road ahead is still long and full of challenges. Has she really left her old life behind? Or will her past catch up with her? The true test of her transformation has just begun. What do you think will happen next? Will Tasha continue to rise? Or will her old habits come back to haunt her? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think is Tasha's biggest challenge moving forward? Don't miss the next chapter, where Tasha faces the consequences of her past choices and the true cost of change. Tasha stood in the quiet of the conference room, the glow of the city lights filtering in through the windows. She had done it. She had succeeded beyond her wildest expectations, but deep down, she felt something gnawing at her. Was it truly over? Had she really left behind her old life? Or was this just the calm before the storm? The event had been a success. Elon Musk had praised her, and the team had applauded her for her leadership. People who had once doubted her were now offering their respect. It was everything she had ever dreamed of, except for one thing. Her past? Tasha had tried to bury it, to shut it out, but it lingered like a shadow that followed her wherever she went. Every time she saw someone from her old neighborhood, she felt the weight of her former life pressing down on her. The streets, the thefts, the lies. Those were parts of her that no amount of success could erase. As she stared out at the skyline, her phone buzzed, pulling her back to the present. It was a message from her old friend, Kira. "Yo, Tasha, where you been? I heard you're working with some big shots now. Don't forget where you came from. We got plans. Hit me up." Tasha's heart sank as she read the message. She had hoped her old life would stay in the past, but Kira's message was a reminder of the pull the streets still had on her. The temptation was strong. It always had been. But now, she wasn't just Tasha, the girl from the block. She was someone else, someone different, someone who had a future. She typed a quick response, then stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the send button. "I'm not that person anymore. I'm not coming back." The words felt foreign, yet they were true. She hit send, the message leaving her with a feeling of finality. But even as she sent it, she felt the weight of what that decision meant. It was a declaration, one that might cost her more than she realized. The next day, Elon called her into his office. He looked at her with the same steady gaze he had the first time they met, but there was something different in his eyes, something that hinted at the weight of what was to come. "Are you ready for the next step?" he asked. Tasha nodded, trying to keep her composure, but her mind was racing. What did that even mean? She had passed his test, but she knew better than anyone that success wasn't just about one moment. It was about the long haul. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady even though her heart was pounding. Elon stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. "Good. But I want to warn you, this next phase isn't going to be easy. You've proven you can handle responsibility, But now you'll be tested in ways you never imagined. Tasha frowned. What do you mean? Your past isn't just going to disappear, Elon said, turning to face her. And neither are the people from it. They'll try to pull you back. Some of them won't understand why you're changing, and they'll want to keep you where you were. But you can't let them. Not if you want this to work. Tasha swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words. She had known this wasn't going to be easy, but hearing it from Elon made it all too real. She wasn't just fighting to prove herself to the world. She was fighting to prove herself to the people who had known her as the girl who stole and ran wild. I won't go back, she said firmly, but the doubt that lingered in her chest wouldn't go away. Elon studied her for a long moment, as if assessing her resolve. Finally, he nodded. Good. I hope you remember that. The next challenge will show you who your real allies are. You're about to face the hardest part of your journey. Later that week, Tasha faced her first real test. Kira showed up at her door, unannounced and armed with the same grin she had worn back when they used to run together. Tasha had seen her coming. She could feel it in her bones. The question was, how would she handle it? You've really made it, huh? Kira said, her eyes scanning the sleek apartment Tasha had been able to afford with her new job. I mean, look at this place. You've got everything. And now, you're too good for us? Tasha took a deep breath, steadying herself. Kira, I've changed. This life isn't for me anymore. Changed? Come on, Tasha. You can't seriously tell me you're giving up everything we had. You were on top with us. You had power. We could make money together. There's still so much you don't know. This? Kira gestured to the apartment. It's nothing. You could have everything we wanted before. Tasha felt the pull. The streets were calling her. The temptation was overwhelming. She could feel the old Tasha, the one who had stolen, who had lived for the thrill, fighting to come back. But she was stronger now. She had to be. I'm not going back to that, Tasha said, her voice firm, though her insides churned with uncertainty. This life, this new opportunity, it's all I've ever wanted. I'm done with the old me. Kira's eyes narrowed, a flicker of disbelief crossing her face. You think you can just walk away from all that? You think they'll ever really accept you in that world? You'll always be that girl from the streets, Tasha. Always. Tasha stood her ground. Not anymore. I'm not that girl anymore. Kira scoffed, but Tasha saw the doubt in her eyes. She knew this wasn't just about a friendship. This was about Tasha proving to herself that she had really changed. Tasha has made a choice, but with that choice comes a price. Will she stay true to her new life, or will her past pull her back? The battle between who she was and who she wants to become is just beginning. What do you think will happen next? Will Tasha stay strong, or will the pull of her past be too much to resist? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. How do you think Tasha should handle the pressure from her past? Don't miss the next chapter, where Tasha faces the consequences of her decisions and the test that could break her resolve. Tasha had never felt more alone. The days since Kira's visit had blurred together. The glitter of her new life, the praise she had received from Elon, and the excitement of being a part of something bigger had all seemed so promising. But as the pressure mounted, Tasha found herself questioning everything. She'd made promises to herself, promises to stay true, but now those promises seemed like fragile glass ready to shatter. The phone buzzed on her desk, pulling her from her thoughts. She glanced at it, her heart sinking. It was a message from Kira again. You're not as smart as you think. This whole new life thing? It's a joke. You'll be back where you belong, and we'll be waiting. Don't think you can outrun who you are. Tasha stared at the screen, feeling the sting of Kira's words like a slap to the face. It wasn't just Kira anymore. The weight of every person who had ever doubted her, who had called her nothing but a criminal, a misfit. Those voices were creeping back into her mind. The battle inside her was growing harder. Could she really leave all of it behind? She leaned back in her chair, breathing deeply, trying to calm the storm inside her. The bright city lights outside were a far cry from the dim streets she'd once called home. But was it really different? Had she changed that much? As the hours ticked by, Tasha found herself lost in thought, the hum of the office around her fading into the background. She wanted to be stronger. She needed to be stronger. But the truth was, every time she looked at the messages from Kira, every time she walked past the familiar faces from her old life, a part of her feared that the change was just a lie she had told herself to feel better. "Are you okay?" Elon's voice broke through her thoughts. He was standing in the doorway of her office, his expression unreadable. Tasha jumped, her hand quickly reaching for her phone to silence it. "Yeah, I'm fine," she said, forcing a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. Elon stepped inside and sat down across from her, his gaze sharp. "I can tell something's bothering you. I don't know what's going on, but I can tell it's affecting your focus. If you need to talk about it, you know I'm here." She hesitated for a moment. It wasn't easy to admit her struggles to Elon, not after everything he had done for her, but she knew he wouldn't let it go. And part of her wanted to get it off her chest, to stop pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. "It's my past," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I could leave it behind, but it's not that simple. Kira's right. I don't fit here. I don't belong in this world. I'm just waiting for everyone to realize that I don't deserve any of it." Elon studied her for a long moment, then leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Tasha, I know your past is complicated. Hell, we all have baggage. But that doesn't define you. What matters is what you do now, how you move forward, not how you got here. Don't let anyone, especially Kira, convince you otherwise." "But what if she's right?" Tasha's voice cracked, the rawness of her feelings coming to the surface. "What if this whole thing is just some mistake, some temporary thing, and I'm not really cut out for it? Then you fail, and then you try again. That's the only way to grow. Your past doesn't have to be a cage that holds you in. It can be the fuel that pushes you forward if you let it," Elon replied, his voice calm but firm. Tasha looked at him, surprised by the conviction in his words. He was right. She had made it this far because she had refused to let her past define her. But there was still a part of her that feared failure, that feared the world would see her as a fraud. Maybe she wasn't as ready for this as she thought. Maybe she couldn't escape the girl who had stolen to survive, the girl who had used people and pushed them away to protect herself. "I don't know if I can do this," Tasha murmured, her hands shaking slightly as she placed them on the desk. Elon leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "Tasha, the only way to know if you can do this is to keep going. You don't have to do it alone. You've already come so far. You've got people here who believe in you, and I believe in you. Now, it's your turn to believe in yourself." Tasha swallowed hard, the lump in her throat almost choking her. It felt like she was standing at the edge of something huge, and the ground below was unclear. Could she take that next step? Could she really leave the girl she had been behind, even when she was still so close to the edge? Later that day, as the office cleared out, Tasha found herself standing at the window, staring at the lights of the city below. The familiar pull of her past was still there, but the future seemed just within reach, if she could find the strength to take it. Her phone buzzed again, another message from Kira. She could feel her heart race as she read it. "You can only run for so long. You'll come back to us. You can't escape who you are, Tasha. Don't forget that." She dropped the phone onto her desk, the words lingering in her mind. Kira had always known how to push her buttons, how to make her doubt herself. But this time was different. She wasn't going back. No matter how hard it was, she couldn't let herself fall back into the life she had fought so hard to escape. Tasha took a deep breath, turning away from the window and back to her desk. Her past would always be there, but it didn't have to define her. She was more than the mistakes she had made, more than the girl who had stolen, lied, and run. She had a future now, and she wasn't going to let anyone, not Kira, not her past, no one, take that away. Tasha has reached a crossroads. She's faced with the hardest decision yet, embracing her past or breaking free from it. Will she stay true to the future she's building, or will her old life pull her back? What do you think Tasha will do next? Can she overcome her past, or will the pressure prove too much? Leave a comment and share your thoughts. Don't miss the next chapter, where Tasha faces the consequences of her decisions and learns that the hardest part of change is not leaving the past behind, but accepting who she's becoming. Tasha awoke the next morning with the heavy weight of the decision hanging over her. The night had brought no relief, no answers. She tossed and turned in her bed, her mind racing with doubts and fears. Was she really strong enough to break away from the life she had always known? As the sun began to rise, she pushed herself out of bed and walked to the small kitchen in her apartment. The city was waking up too, but for some reason, it felt different today, quieter, almost as if the whole world was waiting for her next move. Her phone buzzed again. Kira. Another message. You can't outrun who you really are, Tasha. No matter how much you try. It's only a matter of time before you come crawling back. Tasha's hands clenched around the phone, her breath shallow. She had expected this. Kira wasn't the kind of person to let go easily, especially when she saw someone trying to leave their old life behind. But what Kira didn't understand was that this wasn't about running away. It was about forging a new path, a new identity. And Tasha had every intention of sticking to it. She typed out a quick response, her fingers shaking as she wrote, "I'm done with that life. It's over. I'm not coming back." She hit send before she could change her mind, tossing the phone onto the kitchen counter. Her heart was pounding, and for the first time in a while, she felt like she had just taken control. But that feeling was fleeting. As she was about to start her day, her phone buzzed once again. This time, it wasn't Kira. It was Elon. "Hey, Tasha, are you free to meet up today? We need to talk about the next steps. I believe in what you're doing, but I need to make sure you're fully committed. Let's grab coffee." Tasha stared at the message for a moment. There it was, her chance to solidify everything she had been working for. But a nagging doubt crept up again. Was she really ready for this? Could she truly step into this new life without turning back? And more importantly, could she face the consequences of the choices she had made? She grabbed her jacket, leaving the apartment without another thought. The air outside was crisp, the streets bustling with energy. It was a stark contrast to the chaos in her mind. But as she walked, she noticed something. She was walking now. It felt like a small victory in itself. When she arrived at the cafe, Elon was already seated by the window, his back straight and his focus intense. He didn't look up when she walked in, but the moment he saw her, he smiled. A calm, reassuring smile that made her feel a little less uncertain. "Tasha," he greeted, standing up to shake her hand. "Glad you could make it." "Thanks for reaching out," she replied, taking a seat across from him. "What's up?" Elon took a deep breath, looking at her carefully. "First of all, I want to tell you how much I believe in what you're doing. I can see the potential in you, Tasha, but I need to be honest with you. The path you're on now, it's not easy. There are going to be temptations. There will be moments where your past calls you back, and you'll want to revert to what's familiar." Tasha felt a pang in her chest. She knew exactly what he meant. Every day felt like a tightrope walk, balancing between who she was and who she wanted to become. But hearing it from Elon, someone who had achieved so much, made her realize just how high the stakes were. "I know," she said, her voice quiet but determined, "but I'm not going back. Not this time." Elon studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Good. Because it's not going to be easy, Tasha. You're going to have to work harder than you ever have before. And there will be people who will try to drag you back down. People like Kira." Tasha's stomach twisted at the mention of Kira's name. She could feel the weight of her old life pressing down on her again. But this time, it felt different. She wasn't the same girl who had stolen from strangers and partied away her nights. She had changed, and she wasn't going to let anyone pull her back into the darkness. "I'm ready," Tasha said firmly, looking him in the eye. "I know it's not going to be easy, but I'm done running from who I want to be. I'm going to make this work." Elon smiled, the intensity in his eyes softening. "That's the attitude I like to see. But remember, this isn't just about you. You've got a lot of people counting on you now. You're not alone in this anymore." Tasha nodded, the weight of his words settling in her chest. She wasn't alone anymore, and that meant everything. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was part of something bigger than herself, a part of something that could give her the chance she had been craving her whole life. Later that evening, Tasha stood on the rooftop of her apartment building, looking out over the city. The lights below flickered like tiny stars, and the world felt vast. She had a million thoughts racing through her head, but one thing was certain. She was at a crossroads. There was a message waiting on her phone from Kira, but Tasha didn't open it. She wasn't going to give Kira the power to decide her future anymore. The past was behind her, and as much as it had tried to drag her back, she was determined not to let it. Tasha turned off her phone, dropping it into her pocket. She wasn't going to let fear control her any longer. Tonight, she would choose who she was going to be. Tasha has made a powerful decision, but the real test is just beginning. Will her commitment to change be enough to keep her on the path to success, or will the shadows of her past pull her back? What do you think? Can Tasha stay true to her new life, or will Kira's manipulative ways prove too strong? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't miss the next chapter, where Tasha faces her first major test of loyalty and learns that the price of change is higher than she ever imagined. Tasha woke up the next morning to the sound of her phone buzzing incessantly. Kira. Again. She stared at the screen for a moment, a cold shiver running through her. Last night, she had made a choice. She was going to walk away from the life that had kept her trapped for years. But now, Kira's messages felt like a reminder of the power that her old life still had over her. It felt like a weight on her chest, a constant pull. She sat on the edge of her bed, taking a deep breath. The path ahead of her was going to be filled with challenges, but she knew that the real test had just begun. The life she was trying to build was fragile, and one wrong move could shatter everything. Her phone buzzed again. You think you can just leave, Tasha? You're not built for this. You'll be back on the streets before you know it. Don't even try. Tasha exhaled slowly, closing her eyes. She couldn't let Kira drag her back. She couldn't let her old life pull her under again. With determination, she locked her phone and shoved it into her bag, not caring to respond. She was done being controlled by fear. It was time to meet Elon. Elon was waiting for her at the same cafe they'd met before. When she walked in, he looked up, his eyes instantly lighting up when he saw her. "Good morning, Tasha," he greeted her, motioning for her to take a seat. "How are you feeling today?" Tasha hesitated for a moment before sitting down. "Better," she said, trying to sound confident. "But I have a lot on my mind." "Understandable," Elon said, leaning forward. "I know what you're going through. Breaking away from your past isn't easy. It takes guts, and it's going to take a lot of hard work. But I know you're up for it. I've seen it in you." Tasha felt a spark of hope ignite within her. Elon's faith in her felt different from the false promises of the past. It was genuine, and it made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she was capable of something more than what she had always known. "You're not alone in this," Elon continued. "You've got me and the team behind you. We're building something special, but I need you to make a commitment. It's not just about the work, it's about loyalty. You're going to face situations where your old life will tempt you, and some people may try to pull you back into it. Loyalty to the cause is going to be your strongest weapon." Tasha felt the weight of his words sink in. Loyalty. She had never really known loyalty, not in the way he meant it. Her loyalty had always been to herself and the people she hung around with, the ones who never gave up on her because they were as lost as she was. But now, things were different. She had a choice. She could stick with her old ways, with Kira and the people who always held her back, or she could break free. "I'm ready," she said quietly, the words feeling more real now than they ever had before. "I want this. I want to change." Elon nodded. "Good. But there's one more thing. I've got an opportunity for you. There's a job opening in one of our initiatives, something that could give you the start you need. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be yours if you're willing to take it." Tasha felt a surge of hope flood through her. "What's the catch?" "No catch," Elon said, his eyes meeting hers. "But the people around you will test your loyalty. Kira, for example. She doesn't want to see you succeed. She's threatened by your potential, and she'll try everything to pull you back into your old life. If you want to prove that you've changed, you have to make it clear to her, and to yourself, that you're done with that life." Tasha bit her lip, conflicted. Part of her wanted to reach out to Kira, to remind her that she wasn't leaving her behind. But another part of her knew that in order to succeed, she needed to stand firm and prove that she was serious. I'll do it, Tasha said, her voice unwavering. I'm ready for whatever comes next. Elon smiled, his approval evident. That's the spirit. Now, let's get to work. Later that day, Tasha stood in front of her apartment building, looking up at the sky. She had taken the first steps towards a future she never thought possible. But she knew that the road ahead wouldn't be smooth. Kira was still out there, waiting to strike. And the temptation to return to her old ways would always linger. But Tasha was no longer the girl who stole wallets and lived on the edge. She was someone new, someone stronger. And with Elon's support, she was beginning to see that maybe, just maybe, she could do this. Her phone buzzed again. I'm watching you, Tasha. You're not going to get away that easy. Come back to us. You know you belong here. It was Kira. The words stung, but this time, they didn't have the same power over her. Tasha stared at the message, taking a deep breath before typing her response. I'm done. I'm not coming back. She hit send, her heart pounding in her chest. It felt like a declaration, a final step in leaving her past behind. She wasn't going to let Kira control her anymore. She wasn't going to let fear control her. As she looked out at the city, something inside her shifted. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was finally in control of her own destiny. Tasha has made her choice, but the test of loyalty is far from over. Will she be able to stand firm against the pull of her past? Will Kira's influence prove stronger than Tasha's desire to change? Share your thoughts below. What would you do if you were in Tasha's shoes? What do you think her next move should be? The journey is just beginning. Don't miss the next chapter, where Tasha faces her first real challenge in her new life. Tasha sat in the corner of a small cafe, her fingers tapping nervously on her cup of coffee. Elon had arranged for her to meet someone, a business associate of his who could help her take the next step in her new life. The air was thick with tension, and every minute felt like an eternity. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she knew it was a crucial moment. This could be the break she needed, or it could be the moment everything unraveled. The door to the cafe opened, and a tall, sharply dressed man walked in. His presence was commanding, and he scanned the room with an air of authority. Tasha's heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was the person who could change everything. Tasha? The man asked, his voice low but confident. She stood up, extending her hand. Yeah, that's me. You must be Marcus. He shook her hand firmly. I am. I'm here because Elon believes you've got potential. I'm here to test that. Tasha nodded, her stomach turning. She had no idea what the test would be, but she wasn't backing down now. She had come too far. Let's sit down, Marcus said, leading her to a booth in the back of the cafe. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I want you to be honest with me. No filters, no pretending. This is your chance to prove you're ready for the opportunities Elon has lined up for you. Tasha nodded again, her nerves tightening. This wasn't like anything she had ever done before. The questions that Marcus would ask would determine whether she could leave her old life behind for good. He sat down across from her, his eyes piercing her with an intensity that made her feel like he could see right through her. First question, he began. Why did you steal Elon's wallet? The question hung in the air, and for a moment, Tasha froze. She could feel her old instincts kicking in, the urge to lie, to hide the truth. But she knew better now. She had to face it, own it. I was desperate, she said quietly, her voice steady. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was living day to day, and I thought I needed to do whatever it took to survive. But when I saw him, something changed. I didn't expect him to be so different. I didn't expect anyone to care. Marcus studied her for a moment before nodding. Fair answer. But let's be clear. If you want to change your life, you need to understand the consequences of your actions. Taking what's not yours, whether it's a wallet or a person's trust, is a shortcut. And shortcuts get you nowhere. Tasha swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words. She had been taking shortcuts her entire life. But she was done with that. She wasn't the same person anymore. Second question, Marcus continued. What makes you think you're ready for a life in the business world? Tasha took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. This was the moment that could make or break her. I've seen the worst of what life has to offer, she said, her voice growing stronger. I know what it's like to feel hopeless, but I also know what it's like to have someone believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. I don't want to go back to who I was. I don't want to live in the shadows anymore. I want to build something that's mine. Marcus leaned back in his seat, considering her words. You're not going to get any sympathy in this world, Tasha. You're going to face challenges that will test you. People will try to break you, and there will be times when you feel like everything is falling apart. But if you want to succeed, you need to make a choice every day to keep going. No excuses. Tasha nodded. She had heard that before. Elon had told her the same thing. But hearing it from someone like Marcus, someone who had been through it all, made it feel real. It was up to her now. She couldn't turn back. I understand, she said quietly. I'm ready. Marcus studied her for a moment longer, then stood up. All right. I'll let Elon know that you've passed the first test. But remember, this is just the beginning. You'll be tested again. And if you slip, if you let your past pull you back, there's no coming back from it. Tasha stood up as well, her heart pounding. I won't slip. I promise. Later that night, Tasha sat in her apartment, the weight of the day still pressing on her chest. She had made it through the test, but she knew that the real challenge was just beginning. The temptation to return to her old life was always there, lurking in the shadows. Kira had already tried to pull her back, and the streets were always calling her name. But Tasha had a new focus now. She had made a promise to herself, and she wasn't about to break it. She couldn't afford to. Her phone buzzed, and for a moment, she hesitated before looking at the screen. It was Kira. I told you this wouldn't last, Tasha. You think you can just walk away from us? You can't change who you are. Come back, and we'll make things right. Tasha stared at the message, her fingers tightening around the phone. The old life wanted her back, but she wasn't going to fall for it. Not this time. She typed a response quickly. I'm done. I'm not coming back. This is who I am now. She hit send and threw the phone down on the table, her heart racing. There was no turning back now. She had chosen this path, and she wasn't going to let anyone drag her down. Tasha has made it through her first test, but the road ahead is filled with challenges. Will she be able to withstand the pull of her past? Will she continue to prove that she's ready for a new life? Or will the temptation to return to her old ways prove too strong? What do you think Tasha should do next? Should she trust the process, or is there more danger ahead? Share your thoughts below. Let's see what you would do in her shoes. The story isn't over yet, and the real test is just around the corner. Don't miss the next chapter. Tasha woke up the next morning with a sense of urgency. The weight of the choices she had made the night before hung heavily on her shoulders. She had burned her bridges with her old life, and there was no going back. Kira's message still lingered in her mind, and she knew she couldn't afford to let the past drag her down again. Today was supposed to be different. Elon had invited her to meet with a few people from his business network, and she was determined to prove herself. She was ready to move on, to build something of her own. But the phone call that came a few hours later threatened to derail everything. Is this Tasha? A deep voice asked, the tone sharp and formal. Tasha froze. There was something familiar about the voice. It sounded like someone from Elon's team, but she couldn't quite place it. This is Tasha, she replied cautiously, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm Marcus. We spoke yesterday. I need you to meet someone right now. A test of loyalty, if you will. If you're serious about this, you need to show that you can follow through. Tasha felt a chill run down her spine. The test. She wasn't ready for another challenge, not after everything she had already been through. But she had no choice. I'm on my way, she said, ending the call abruptly. When she arrived at the meeting location, a high-end conference room in a building that looked more like a fortress than an office, Tasha was greeted by a cold, stern woman sitting at the head of the table. You're Tasha? The woman asked, her eyes sharp. Yeah, Tasha said, trying to sound confident despite the nerves gnawing at her. Who are you? I'm Rachel. I've been working with Marcus and Elon for years. Today, I'm here to see if you've really changed. If you're ready for the world you want to step into. Tasha didn't reply right away. She had no idea what kind of test Rachel was going to throw at her, but she could feel the weight of the room pressing in on her. Sit, Rachel commanded, pointing to the chair across from her. Tasha obeyed, sitting down, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Rachel leaned in, her gaze unwavering. "The question is simple," Rachel began, her voice low and deliberate. "We've seen your past, Tasha. We know what you've been through. But we also know what you've done, how you've hurt people to get by. If we give you a chance, will you be loyal? Or will you go back to your old ways? I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to show us that you can be trusted, that you won't sabotage everything we've worked for." Tasha swallowed hard. The pressure was suffocating. Her entire future hinged on this moment. Her hand shook as she clenched it into a fist, steadying herself. There was no room for doubt, no room for failure. "I'm ready," she said firmly, looking Rachel in the eye. "I'm not going back. I've made my choice." Rachel's eyes narrowed as if she were evaluating Tasha's every word. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Good," she said simply. "But actions speak louder than words. Show us you mean it." With that, she pushed a small, encrypted flash drive across the table. "You'll take this to Elon. But here's the catch. You can't open it. You don't know what's on it. And there's a time limit. You have 24 hours to get it to him. If you open it, or if you don't deliver it on time, we'll know you're not serious." Tasha's heart pounded. The flash drive was a test of loyalty, but it was also a test of trust. If she made the wrong move, everything would be over. She had no idea what was on that drive. But she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't fail now. "I'll get it to him," she said, her voice steady. Rachel leaned back in her chair. "Good. You have 24 hours. Don't waste them." As Tasha walked out of the building, the weight of the flash drive in her hand felt heavier than ever. She had a choice to make. Was she going to prove herself, or was she going to be tempted to take a shortcut, to peek inside and risk everything? Her phone buzzed again, and her stomach dropped. It was a message from Kira. "You know you can't trust them, right? Elon's not your friend. He's just using you. Come back, Tasha. We've got your back." Tasha's fingers hovered over the screen. For a moment, she was tempted to reply. Kira was still out there, still trying to pull her back into the life she had worked so hard to escape. But Tasha knew better now. She had to prove to herself that she wasn't who she used to be. She stuffed the phone back into her pocket and started walking faster. There was no time for distractions, no time for second-guessing. She had a deadline to meet, and if she wanted to make it, she had to stay focused. The next 24 hours would be the ultimate test. Tasha has been given a critical test. Will she remain loyal and prove that she's ready to step into a new life? Or will she let temptation destroy everything she's worked for? What do you think? Should she open the drive and take the risk, or stay true to her promise? What would you do in her shoes? Tasha didn't sleep that night. She paced around her small apartment, eyes constantly flicking toward the clock on the wall. The weight of the flash drive in her bag felt like a ticking time bomb, a constant reminder of what was at stake. Her mind raced, torn between the pressure to make the right decision and the lure of temptation to open it, to see what was hidden inside. She had spent years living in a world of shortcuts, where doing the easy thing had always seemed like the way out. But now, everything was different. She had made a vow to herself, a vow to be better, to do better. She couldn't let her old life pull her back in, not when she was so close to something real, something that could finally change everything. She checked her phone again. No new messages. Kira's words still lingered in her mind, but she couldn't afford to get distracted. She'd made her choice. This was her test, and it wasn't just about proving herself to Elon and his team. It was about proving herself to herself. At exactly 10 p.m., she left her apartment. The cold night air slapped her in the face, but it was a reminder that she had nothing left to lose. There was no going back now. She arrived at the sleek, modern building where Elon was staying, her heart pounding in her chest. The security guard at the front desk gave her a knowing look, and she felt a flicker of doubt. What if they were watching her? What if they were testing her even more than she realized? But she didn't have time to dwell on that. She handed the flash drive to the receptionist, her hands trembling as she did. "I need to see Elon," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The receptionist eyed her for a moment, but then nodded and picked up the phone. Tasha waited, her heart in her throat. She had made it this far. There was no turning back. Elon's office was on the top floor, a large space with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. When he walked in, Tasha's breath caught in her throat. He was dressed in a casual black jacket and jeans, looking every bit the billionaire who had created so much. But there was something about him, something intimidating in the way he carried himself, that made her feel small in comparison. "You made it," he said, his voice cool but not unkind. "I did," Tasha replied, trying to steady her shaking hands. "I brought the drive, just like you asked." He motioned for her to sit. "Thank you. You did well. But I need to know something before we go any further." Tasha sat down, her heart racing. She had no idea where this conversation was headed, but she had come this far. She couldn't falter now. Elon leaned forward, his gaze sharp. "What made you decide to do this? To change?" Tasha swallowed hard. She had been expecting a business-related question, but this was personal, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to face the truth about herself. But she had to. "I guess. I got tired of running," she said softly. "Tired of hurting people. Tired of letting my past control me. I want more. I don't want to be stuck in that life forever." Elon's expression softened, just slightly. "You know, most people would have turned the other way, would have kept playing the game. But you didn't. That's what makes you different. That's why I believe you can make something of yourself." Tasha didn't know how to respond to that. She had always felt like the odds were stacked against her, like she was doomed to repeat the same mistakes forever. But Elon was giving her a chance. And for the first time, she wasn't sure if she deserved it. He stood up, taking the flash drive from her and plugging it into his laptop. The screen flickered for a moment before revealing a complex series of encrypted files. "I've been watching you, Tasha," Elon said, as if reading her thoughts. "Not just the mistakes you've made, but the way you've tried to change. You're a work in progress, but you're worth the investment." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She had thought she was just another person to be used and discarded, but Elon was seeing something in her she had never seen in herself. But before she could fully process what was happening, Elon clicked a few keys, and the screen revealed something that made Tasha's heart stop. The files weren't just business-related. They were personal. Files on Kira, on her family, on everyone from her past that she had tried so hard to leave behind. Tasha's breath caught in her throat. "What is this?" "This," Elon said, his tone cold now, "is what happens when you choose to trust the wrong people." Tasha's world began to spin. She had walked into this room believing she was making the right choice. But now, everything she thought she knew was being questioned. The drive had been a test, but so was the information Elon had just revealed to her. "Did you think you could just walk away from your past?" Elon asked, his voice now full of warning. "There's no escaping who you were, Tasha. Not even if you're standing here, right now." Her mind raced. Was she being played? Was this part of the test, or had she truly made a terrible mistake? But before she could speak, Elon turned his attention back to the laptop. "Your next move is up to you," he said, his eyes never leaving the screen. "And if you fail this test, well, there's no going back from that. Tasha has crossed a line, one that may be harder to turn back from than she ever realized." The flash drive wasn't just a test of loyalty, it was a test of trust. But now she's faced with a decision that could change everything. What do you think she should do? Should she trust Elon, or should she turn her back on him before it's too late? Tasha sat frozen, her mind racing. Elon's words echoed in her ears, but they didn't make sense. He had trusted her with something, yet now, it felt like she was the one being tested. The information on the screen, Kira's life, her family, her secrets, was a threat. A weapon Elon was wielding against her. Tasha had always been on the wrong side of things, always scrambling to survive in a world that didn't care about her. But this was different. Her eyes flicked to Elon, who was sitting across from her with his fingers poised over the keyboard. There was no kindness left in his eyes now. The man she had met at the diner, the man who had believed in her, was gone. What she was seeing now was something colder, more calculating. "You said I could change," Tasha said, her voice low, barely above a whisper. "You said I was worth the investment." Elon didn't look up. "People change when they realize what's at stake, Tasha. And right now, you don't even know what's at stake. You've seen the files. You know what I'm capable of. Now, you get to decide. Are you really ready to change, or will you keep running? Tasha's heart hammered in her chest. She had trusted Elon with everything. Her past, her future, everything she had ever hoped for. But now, the rug was being pulled out from under her. Was she really ready to leave behind the life she had known, even if it meant losing everything else? Could she trust Elon, or was this all a game? I didn't come here for this, Tasha said, standing up abruptly, her mind clouded with confusion and fear. I thought you believed in me. I thought you wanted to help me. Elon finally looked up from the screen, his expression unreadable. I do want to help you, but I'm not going to let you fall for the same lies you've been falling for your entire life. This isn't about me, Tasha. It's about you. It's about whether you're willing to make the hard choices. Tasha's breath caught in her throat. She had never been good at making the hard choices. In her world, it was all about survival, taking what she could, when she could. But this was different. This wasn't about survival. This was about growth, about breaking free from the chains of her past. But the stakes were higher than she ever could have imagined. I can't do this, Tasha said, turning away, her hands shaking. She had no idea where to go from here. She didn't know what was right, or if she could even trust herself anymore. She had always been able to rely on her instincts, her ability to read people, to get by. But now, her instincts were telling her something else. Elon stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. You're right. You can't do this alone. But you're not alone, Tasha. Not anymore. Her chest tightened as he walked toward her, his face softening just slightly. For the first time since their meeting, she saw a flicker of something else, a genuine concern. Was it possible that Elon had been telling the truth all along? But before she could respond, there was a sharp knock on the door. The moment shattered. Elon didn't flinch, but Tasha felt a cold chill run down her spine. She didn't know who was on the other side of that door, but the fact that it had interrupted such an intense moment made her uneasy. Elon's face was unreadable now, but his voice was steady as he walked to the door and opened it. A tall, imposing man entered the room, his eyes briefly scanning Tasha before landing on Elon. The man didn't speak right away. He just gave a nod, and Elon, without saying a word, handed him the flash drive. Take care of it, Elon said, his tone clipped. Tasha's heart sank. This was it, the moment where everything changed. She had hoped for a chance to prove herself, but now she wasn't sure if she had been playing in a game she didn't understand. The man gave a curt nod before leaving as quietly as he'd entered. The room felt cold now, heavy with tension. You don't trust me, do you? Tasha said, her voice shaking with frustration. Elon met her gaze. It's not about trust. It's about your commitment. Are you committed to changing, or are you still running? Tasha's pulse raced. She had come this far. She had come to believe that change was possible. But this wasn't the future she had envisioned. This wasn't a fairy tale where everything magically worked out. This isn't what I signed up for, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought I was going to be part of something good. But now, I'm not sure. Elon's eyes softened again, but there was a hardness to his voice when he spoke. You're right. This isn't what you signed up for. But this is what you need to see if you want to move forward. Sometimes, you have to face the truth, no matter how ugly it is. Tasha stood in silence, her thoughts a storm of confusion. She didn't know what to do anymore. Her mind screamed at her to run, to leave everything behind, but her feet wouldn't move. She couldn't leave. Not yet. She had come this far. And now, she had to decide what kind of person she was going to be. Would she take the easy way out, or would she face the truth, no matter the cost? Tasha is standing at the edge, with no clear path forward. But the choices she makes from here on will define her future. Will she rise to the challenge, or will she fall back into the habits of her past? What do you think Tasha should do? Should she trust Elon and move forward, or walk away and face the consequences? Let us know in the comments below. Stay tuned for the next chapter as Tasha's journey takes another unexpected turn. Tasha stood still, her mind swirling with uncertainty. The door had closed behind the man who had taken the flash drive. It was as if the weight of the world had pressed down on her all at once. She could feel it in her chest, a pressure she couldn't shake, no matter how hard she tried to breathe. The room felt suffocating now, the air thick with tension and the consequences of her actions. Elon was watching her closely, his eyes still calculating, but there was something in them, a flicker of hope, perhaps, or maybe it was just a reflection of her own desperation. She didn't know anymore. "You're not going to tell me what to do, are you?" Tasha asked, her voice trembling but defiant. "You're not going to just force me to follow your path, right?" Elon stepped closer, his demeanor calm, but his words carried weight. "I'm not here to force you into anything. I'm here to show you the choices you have, but the final decision is yours." Tasha shook her head, still overwhelmed by everything that had happened. She had never felt so out of control, so lost. A part of her wanted to scream, to throw everything away and run. But the other part, the part that had been buried deep inside her for so long, was beginning to stir. It was the part that wanted something more than the life she had known. The part that had dared to dream, even when she had been too afraid to admit it to herself. But could she really change? Was it too late for someone like her? Could she ever escape the world of theft, of dishonesty, of running from the past? "You know what I've done," Tasha said quietly, her voice strained. "You know what I've been. You know what I'm capable of. How could you believe in me after all of that?" Elon's gaze softened, and for the first time, he seemed less like the calculating businessman and more like someone who understood her struggle. "Because I've seen what you're capable of, Tasha. You've survived. You've fought to get by in a world that hasn't given you any favors. But now, you have a chance to fight for something better." Tasha turned away, her hand gripping the back of the chair as she tried to steady herself. It was too much to process. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this wasn't just another game. But how could she? She had seen too many false promises in her life to trust someone so easily. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered, the words breaking through the knot in her throat. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to change." Elon walked toward her, his steps measured but purposeful. "I'm not asking you to be perfect, Tasha. I'm asking you to take the first step. One step, and then another. That's how change happens. You don't have to be strong enough right now, but you have to be willing." She felt a lump form in her throat, the weight of his words sinking deep into her chest. He wasn't offering a quick fix. He wasn't offering an easy way out. What he was offering was something much harder, an opportunity to rebuild, to forge a new path. But did she even know how to begin? The silence between them stretched on, thick and heavy, until it felt like the air itself was holding its breath. "I don't want to go back to what I was," Tasha said, her voice shaky but firm. "I don't want to keep running." Elon nodded, his expression unreadable. "Then don't. But you need to understand something. This life, this new life, won't be handed to you. It will take everything you have. You'll face your demons, your fears, your past. And there will be times when you feel like giving up. But if you keep moving forward, one step at a time, you'll get there." Tasha closed her eyes, her heart beating faster with the realization that, for the first time, she wasn't just running away. She was choosing to stand and fight. The fear in her chest didn't vanish, but it transformed. It became something else, something she could use. "You're right," she said finally, lifting her head. "I'm ready. I don't know if I can do everything you're asking, but I'm ready to try." A small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of Elon's lips. "That's all I can ask for." Tasha's breath caught as she realized something in that moment. It wasn't about becoming someone else. It wasn't about erasing her past or pretending she wasn't who she was. It was about moving forward despite her past. It was about finding strength she never knew she had. She wasn't broken. Not anymore. And with that, she made the choice. The hardest choice of her life. Tasha has taken the first step toward change, but the road ahead is still uncertain. The path she's chosen won't be easy, and there's a long way to go. What do you think will happen next? Will Tasha succeed in her journey, or will the weight of her past drag her down? Tasha sat in her room, the weight of the decision she'd just made pressing down on her like a 1,000-pound boulder. Her hands trembled as she stared at the floor, thoughts swirling faster than she could process them. She had agreed to try, but now that she had taken the first step, She didn't know what came next. Her phone buzzed on the table, interrupting her thoughts. She glanced at the screen. It was a message from Jada. You really think you can change, huh? It's not that simple, Tasha. The streets don't let you go that easy. Tasha's heart skipped a beat. She knew Jada was right. The streets, the life she had lived, it didn't just let you walk away. Once you were in, it was like a gravity pulling you back no matter how hard you tried to fight it. Tasha wasn't a stranger to betrayal. She had seen it, felt it, and sometimes been a part of it. And now, here she was, trying to build something different, trying to leave it all behind. But would the world let her? Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a picture of her past. It was an old photograph from a time when she had been lost in that life. A snapshot of her and Jada, standing side by side, both grinning in front of a stolen car. The image made her sick to her stomach. You can't outrun who you are, Tasha. The message came from Jada, too. Tasha stared at it for what felt like hours. She wanted to delete it, to forget, to move forward. But she couldn't. It was as if that image, that message, was a chain trying to pull her back into the life she had just started to escape. She put the phone down, clenched her fists, and let the rage build inside her. She had to stop letting the past define her. A knock on her door pulled her out of the storm of thoughts swirling inside her head. Tasha, Elon's voice came through the door. Can I come in? She wiped the tears from her eyes and nodded. Yeah. The door creaked open, and Elon stepped inside, his expression softer than it had been before. He didn't say anything immediately, but just stood there, letting her absorb his presence. He had given her a chance, a lifeline, but she wasn't sure she was ready to grab it. I got the flash drive back, Elon said quietly, but that's not why I'm here. Tasha glanced up, confused. Then why? He walked over and sat down beside her on the bed. Because I think you need to know that the past doesn't have to hold you. You're not the mistakes you've made. You're more than that, Tasha. I see the potential in you. You're not just some girl off the streets. You have something to offer. Tasha bit her lip, trying to suppress the surge of emotions. You don't know me. You don't know where I've been, what I've done. I know enough, Elon said, his voice calm but firm. I know that you've survived things most people couldn't even imagine. And that's not something you can just throw away. It's strength, Tasha, and that strength can be used for something better. But it has to be your choice. She stood up abruptly, walking over to the window and staring out at the city lights. It felt suffocating in here, like every step she took forward just led her into a cage of uncertainty. Do you think I can change? She asked, her voice small, almost a whisper. Elon stood up and joined her by the window. I think you can do anything you set your mind to, but it won't be easy. There are going to be days when you'll want to give up, when the world will try to pull you back, and you'll have to decide. Are you going to let the past control you, or are you going to fight for the future you deserve? The words hit her like a punch in the gut. For the first time, Tasha felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly smothered by the weight of the fear that had always held her back. Tasha took a deep breath. I want to change, but it's hard. I don't know how. Elon smiled slightly. You don't have to know how right now. You just have to be willing to start, and I'll help you with that. Tasha looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of uncertainty and something else, something new, something that might have been hope. For the first time, she felt the possibility of a future where she wasn't defined by her past. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't look at it this time. She didn't need to. She had already made her decision. Tasha is at a crossroads, and the road ahead is far from clear. She has decided to fight for a new future, but the shadows of her past are never far behind. Will she be able to resist the pull of her old life, or will it drag her back down? The next morning, Tasha woke up feeling a mixture of anxiety and hope. She had spent hours lying in bed, trying to ignore the voice in her head that told her she wasn't strong enough to leave everything behind. But today, she was determined. Today, she would make a choice for herself. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Jada. He's not going to change you, Tasha. He doesn't know the real you. You'll be back on the block before you know it. Tasha's stomach twisted. The familiar sting of betrayal cut deeper now. She was tired of Jada's voice in her head, always pulling her back, always trying to remind her of the life she had fought so hard to escape. But she had made it this far. She couldn't let Jada, or anyone else, convince her that she couldn't change. She turned her phone off and tossed it on the bed. Today, she was going to prove to herself that she could take control of her life. When she walked into the kitchen, Elon was already there, sitting at the table with his laptop open. He looked up as she entered and gave her a warm smile. "You ready?" he asked. Tasha hesitated. The truth was, she didn't know if she was ready, but she couldn't keep putting it off. She had to try. "I think so," she said, pulling out a chair and sitting across from him. Elon closed his laptop and leaned forward. "I've been thinking. It's time for you to meet with someone who can help you take the next step. Someone who can give you the tools you need to succeed, outside of the streets, outside of everything that's held you back." Tasha's brows furrowed. "Who?" "You'll see. But trust me, they'll help you." Before she could ask more questions, the doorbell rang. Elon stood up. "Come on, let's go. It's time." Tasha followed him out of the house, unsure of what was about to happen. She didn't know what Elon had in mind, but there was a part of her that felt a strange sense of excitement. For the first time, it felt like something was actually going to change. They drove for what felt like hours, the city passing by in a blur of familiar streets and unfamiliar feelings. Tasha stared out of the window, trying to keep her mind from racing too much. She couldn't help but think about everything she had left behind. The gang, the drugs, the broken promises, and wonder if it was really possible to build a new life from all the ruins. Elon's voice broke through her thoughts. "We're almost there." The car slowed as they pulled up to a sleek, modern building in the heart of the city. Tasha had no idea what kind of place this was, but she couldn't ignore the pit in her stomach. "Where are we?" she asked. Elon smiled slightly, his expression unreadable. "It's a place where people like you can turn their lives around. A place where the streets don't have a hold on you anymore." He led her inside, and the scent of fresh coffee and polished wood filled the air. Tasha's eyes widened as she took in her surroundings. It wasn't anything like the streets she was used to. This place felt clean, calm, and different. She was surrounded by people working, talking, and walking around as if they had a purpose. She could barely keep up with Elon as he led her down a long hallway. Finally, they stopped in front of a door, and Elon knocked gently before opening it. Inside was a middle-aged man sitting behind a large desk, his face calm but sharp. "This is Mr. Stevens," Elon said. "He's the one who can help you, Tasha." Tasha swallowed hard. She wasn't sure what she expected, but this man was nothing like the people she was used to dealing with. There was no threat, no intimidation, just a quiet authority that made her feel vulnerable. Mr. Stevens stood up and offered his hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Tasha. I've heard a lot of good things about you." Tasha hesitated, then took his hand, her grip tight. "Good things?" Elon nodded. "You've got potential. I can see that already." Mr. Stevens smiled. "That's exactly why you're here. We can help you find that potential. We have the resources, the connections, and the support you need. But it's going to take more than just showing up. It's going to take a commitment from you." Tasha didn't know what to say. She had spent so long fighting for survival, fighting just to get by, that she wasn't sure how to let go of the past. "Don't worry," Mr. Stevens said, sensing her hesitation. "We'll take it one step at a time. But the first step starts with you believing that you can change." Tasha glanced at Elon, who gave her an encouraging nod. She could feel the weight of her old life pressing down on her, but she also felt something else, hope. It was a fragile thing, but it was there. Tasha took a deep breath, finally meeting Mr. Stevens' gaze. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. "I want to change." Tasha has taken the first step toward leaving her old life behind, but the road ahead is still unclear. The promise of change is tantalizing, but can she truly overcome the pull of her past? What do you think? Is Tasha strong enough to follow through with this new life, or will she be dragged back to the streets? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Tasha spent the next few days in a haze of uncertainty. She woke up early every morning, forcing herself to get out of bed and start the day with the same hope she had felt when she walked into that sleek building with Elon. But it wasn't easy. The streets kept calling her back, whispering in her ear, reminding her of the comfort in chaos, the freedom in running wild. Every time her phone buzzed, her stomach twisted. Jada's messages were relentless. "What are you doing, Tasha? You really think you're gonna make it out here? You're just like the rest of us, no matter how much money you think you've got." Each message dug deeper, a reminder of the loyalty she had left behind, the life she had once embraced. Elon had promised her that this was her chance to start fresh, but Tasha's feet were still rooted in the familiar. The streets felt like home in a way the polished walls of the office never could. Every time she stepped outside, she could hear the rhythm of the neighborhood calling her back, like a song she couldn't forget. But there was also this other part of her, this quiet voice, that told her to keep going, to stay in this new world just a little longer. It was the hope she had to cling to. Elon was patient, though, never pushing her too hard. He took her to meetings with people who seemed to care about more than just her past. Mr. Stevens kept checking in, offering her words of encouragement, and slowly, Tasha began to realize that they believed in her in a way she had never experienced before. But the temptation to return to the streets still gnawed at her. One afternoon, as she walked to her car, she ran into an old acquaintance, Malik. He looked at her with that same knowing smirk, the kind that had always made her feel invincible. Well, look who's got a new life," Malik said, leaning against the hood of his car. "You think this place is gonna fix you, huh? You think you're special now?" Tasha's heart skipped a beat. Malik had always been the kind of guy who could talk people into anything, even when they didn't want to listen. "I'm not here to talk about the past, Malik," Tasha said, trying to push past him, but Malik stepped in front of her, blocking her way. "Come on, Tasha. You know as well as I do that no one can run from where they came from. You might be fooling these people, but you're not fooling me. You're not built for this life. You're built for the streets." Tasha felt her stomach tighten. It was hard to hear, but she knew he was right in some ways. She had always found comfort in the chaos, in the adrenaline rush that came with living on the edge. "You can't just walk away from who you are," Malik continued, his voice softening. "You belong out there with us. You've always been one of us, and nothing's gonna change that. Don't let this guy," he nodded towards the building, "sell you a dream that isn't yours." Tasha's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to say something, anything, to shut him down, but she couldn't. The doubt he planted in her mind was already taking root. What if he was right? What if she wasn't made for this clean life after all? As she sat in her car, staring at the streetlights, the conflict inside her grew louder. She didn't want to go back to the way things were, but a part of her was afraid she couldn't escape who she had been. She remembered the nights when survival was everything, when she had to hustle just to eat, just to stay safe. She had grown up in a world where power came from fear, and loyalty meant something dark, something dangerous. What Elon had offered her was a lifeline, but was she strong enough to take it? Would she really be able to leave all of that behind? The sound of a new message pulled her back to the present. It was from Elon. "Tasha, I'm here if you need to talk. But remember, this is your journey. You control what happens next." She stared at the message, feeling the weight of it settle over her. It was a reminder of everything she was working for, everything she could be. But then, just as quickly, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Jada. "You're wasting your time, girl. You're not cut out for this. You'll always be a product of your environment. Don't let them fool you." Her mind raced. Two opposing forces, pulling her in different directions. She wanted to believe in Elon, to believe that she could be someone different, someone better. But could she really escape the pull of the streets? Could she really cut herself off from everything she had known? She stared at the messages, unsure of which way to go. Tasha is at a crossroads, torn between the life she's trying to build and the life that has always held her down. The streets are calling her back, but is she strong enough to resist? What do you think? Will Tasha choose the path of change, or will she return to her old ways? Tasha couldn't shake the feeling that everything was at stake now. The decision that loomed over her felt too heavy, and the pressure was building up every hour. She had spent years living in survival mode, where each day was a fight to stay afloat, to keep from drowning in a world that didn't care if she sank or swam. And now, after everything she had been through, everything Elon had offered, she was standing at a crossroads. The pull of her past was strong, but the promise of something better, something different, flickered like a distant light at the end of a tunnel. But could she really trust it? Could she trust herself to walk away from everything she knew? The next morning, Tasha woke up early, as she had been doing for the past week. The city was still quiet, the streets empty except for a few cars making their way through the rising fog. She dressed quickly, her mind racing as she gathered the courage to face the day. When she arrived at the office, Elon was already there, pacing in the lobby, his expression tense. He looked up as she entered, his eyes softening when he saw her. "Tasha," he greeted her with a smile, but there was something different in his voice, a slight edge that made her pause. "Is everything okay?" she asked, feeling the weight of the moment settling in. "I was just thinking," Elon began, motioning for her to sit, "about how much potential you have, about how far you can go if you keep pushing forward. But the thing is," he hesitated, "it's not going to be easy. There are people who won't want to see you succeed. There are people who will try to pull you back into the life you left behind." Tasha nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. She had already been warned. "I'm not afraid of the streets, Elon," she said, meeting his gaze. "I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of not being able to change." Elon's smile returned, but there was a hardness to it now, a quiet understanding. "You're stronger than you think, Tasha, but you have to make a choice. It's not about how hard you fight the past. It's about how you decide to move forward. And that means cutting some ties, even if it feels impossible." That afternoon, Tasha received a call. It was Malik. "You think you're too good for us now, huh?" he spat, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think you can just walk away and forget where you came from? You don't even know what you're stepping into. You can't trust these people. They don't care about you, Tasha. They'll use you, and when you're no longer useful, they'll toss you aside. But you and me, we're family. We've been through it all. You really gonna throw that away?" The words hit her like a slap to the face. Malik was the kind of guy who always knew how to play with her emotions, how to make her feel like she owed him something. He had always been there, in the good times and the bad, guiding her through the chaos. But she had outgrown him, outgrown everything he represented. "I'm not throwing anything away, Malik," she said, her voice steady. "I'm choosing something different. And you should too. You don't have to live like this." "Don't give me that bullshit, Tasha," he shot back, his tone hard. "You're gonna come crawling back. They all do, just like you always have. Don't think you're the exception." The line went dead, leaving her in silence. Tasha sat there, holding the phone in her hand, the weight of Malik's words hanging in the air. It would be so easy to fall back into the rhythm of her old life. The streets knew her, they understood her. She didn't have to pretend to be someone she wasn't. But Elon's words echoed in her mind, urging her to rise above it all, to make the tough decision and build a future for herself that didn't rely on the past. She had come too far to turn back now. That night, she made her decision. She called Jada one last time. "I'm done, Jada," she said, her voice firm. "I'm not coming back. I'm not going down that path anymore." There was silence on the other end of the line before Jada spoke, her tone bitter. "You'll regret this, Tasha. You'll see. You can't outrun who you really are." "I don't need to outrun it," Tasha replied. "I'm just ready to move forward." Tasha has made her choice, but the struggle is far from over. The weight of her past is still pulling at her, and the people she thought she could trust are turning against her. But she's determined to keep moving forward. Will she succeed in building a new life, or will her past drag her back? Tasha stood at the window of her small apartment, looking out at the city below. The streets were alive, bustling with the rhythm of the city, yet she felt like a stranger to it all. The world felt distant, unreachable. Her mind raced as she thought about everything that had happened. Malik's words still echoed in her ears, like a haunting reminder of the world she was trying to escape. She had made the choice to walk away, but now, as the days dragged on, she began to question whether she had made the right one. The weight of the decision was heavier than she had anticipated. Could she really leave everything behind? Could she really be someone else, someone better? The silence in the apartment felt suffocating. She picked up her phone, scrolling through the messages she had received from Elon. He was checking in on her, offering words of encouragement, but there was something in his messages now, something that made her feel like she was about to disappoint him. Elon had seen her potential from the beginning, but did she really have what it took? Did she have the strength to resist the pull of her past and take control of her future? A knock on the door startled her out of her thoughts. She opened it to find Jada standing in the hallway, her expression unreadable. "I knew you couldn't do it, Tasha," Jada said flatly, her eyes cold. "You're running from yourself. And for what? Some rich guy who doesn't give a damn about you?" Tasha swallowed hard, trying to steady her nerves. "I'm not running, Jada. I'm trying to build something. I don't want to be stuck in the same place forever." Jada stepped into the apartment, her gaze sweeping over the small space. "And this? This is what you're building? This is your new life?" she asked, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "You're still the same girl, Tasha. You just think you're better than us now." Tasha's hands clenched into fists, anger rising in her chest. "I'm not better than anyone, Jada. I just want more. And I'm going to get it, whether you like it or not." Jada's smile faded, replaced by a look of disgust. "You think you're so special, huh? You really think you can just walk away from everything we've been through, from everything we've done? You're not going anywhere, Tasha. You're never going to change." Before Tasha could respond, Jada turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. Tasha stood frozen, the sting of Jada's words cutting deep. She wanted to scream, to break something, but instead, she sank to the floor, her back against the door. It was too much. The pressure, the doubt, the uncertainty. It all felt like it was crashing down on her at once. And then her phone buzzed, snapping her out of the moment. It was a message from Elon. "Hey, Tasha, how's everything going? I know it's been tough, but you've got this. Don't let anyone pull you back. You're stronger than they realize." Her heart tightened as she read the message. Elon had been there for her, offering support when no one else had. He believed in her. But did she believe in herself? Tasha spent the rest of the evening in a daze, not sure what to do next. She couldn't go back to her old life. She knew that much. But every step forward felt like a battle, one that she wasn't sure she was winning. The next morning, she received another message from Elon, this one different. "I need to talk to you about something important. Can you meet me?" Tasha felt her pulse quicken. What did he want to talk about? Her mind raced with possibilities, each one darker than the last. Was he giving up on her? Was he disappointed in her? She quickly typed back, agreeing to meet him later that day. As she prepared for their meeting, the fear in her chest grew. What if she wasn't ready for whatever Elon had planned for her next? When Tasha arrived at the coffee shop, Elon was already sitting at a corner table, his laptop open in front of him. His eyes lit up when he saw her, but there was a seriousness in his expression that made her uneasy. "Tasha, I'm glad you came," Elon said, his voice calm but firm. "I've been thinking a lot about you, about everything you've been through, and I think it's time we take the next step." Tasha sat down, her heart racing. "Next step? What do you mean?" Elon took a deep breath, leaning forward. "I know you're struggling. I know you're feeling lost right now, but you've got more potential than you realize. I want to help you unlock that. I want to offer you a real opportunity, a chance to build something that's bigger than anything you've ever known." Tasha stared at him, confused. What kind of opportunity? Elon smiled, but there was a flicker of something else in his eyes. "I want you to come work with me, Tasha. Not just as an assistant, not just as a go-between. I want you to be part of something bigger. I want you to help me build something that will change the world." Tasha stands at the threshold of something huge, but she's still battling with the doubts from her past. Will she take Elon's offer and step into the unknown, or will her past continue to hold her back? The pressure is on. Tasha sat at the table, her mind reeling. Elon's words hung in the air like a weight, pressing down on her chest. A chance to change her life, to prove that she wasn't just some girl from the streets. But could she really do it? Could she step into a world so different from everything she knew? The coffee shop around her buzzed with conversations, but everything felt muffled, like she was submerged underwater. Her thoughts were a chaotic mess. Her past, her mistakes, her friends who had never believed in anything better for her. She couldn't deny it. She had always been the girl who took the easy route, who stole from others because it felt like the only way to survive. But now, sitting across from Elon, the opportunity before her seemed too real to ignore. "Why me?" she asked, her voice a mixture of disbelief and suspicion. "Why would you want someone like me on your team?" Elon leaned back in his chair, his gaze unwavering. "Because I see something in you, Tasha. I see potential. And I don't just mean business potential. I mean the kind of person you can become. Everyone has a turning point, a moment when they decide who they really want to be. I think this is yours." Tasha's heart pounded as she processed his words. A turning point. Was this hers? As the conversation continued, Elon laid out his vision, big, bold, and daring. He wanted to create something that would change the world, something that was about more than just profits. He wanted to make an impact, to inspire others to think differently, to challenge the status quo. And he believed that Tasha had a unique perspective, one that could help shape that vision. "You've lived a life that most people don't understand," Elon said, his voice gentle but firm. "You've seen the world from a different angle, a raw, unfiltered view of it. And that's exactly what this world needs right now. People who can see things in a new way, who aren't afraid to break the rules and create something meaningful." Tasha felt a fire ignite inside her, something that hadn't been there before. She had always been good at surviving, but could she actually thrive? Could she really leave behind the streets, the thefts, the lies, and start fresh? Her hand trembled as she picked up her cup of coffee, staring at the swirling dark liquid. The temptation to run, to back away from this chance, was strong. Her past was still there, lurking in the corners of her mind, reminding her of the girl she had been. But something about Elon's words made her think that maybe, just maybe, she could be someone else. "I don't know, Elon," she said quietly, her voice betraying the uncertainty she felt. "This is a lot. I've never done anything like this. What if I fail?" Elon's smile was reassuring, warm. "Failure is part of the process. It's not about being perfect. It's about being willing to try. And I believe you can do this, Tasha." The words sank in, and for the first time in a long time, Tasha felt a spark of hope. It was fragile, like a flame on the edge of going out, but it was there. She had nothing left to lose. But the question remained. Was she ready to make that leap? The decision weighed heavily on her mind in the days that followed. She couldn't escape the voices in her head, the ones from her past, the ones who had told her she was nothing more than a product of her environment. They told her that she didn't belong in a world like Elon's, that people like her didn't get second chances. But as she walked through the streets of her neighborhood one night, she realized something. The old Tasha, the girl who had stolen from people, the one who had settled for a life of crime and chaos, she was gone. That life wasn't who she was anymore. She had made mistakes, sure, but she wasn't defined by them. The only thing that could define her now was the choices she made moving forward. The next morning, Tasha stood at the doorstep of Elon's office. Her heart raced in her chest, but her mind was clear. She had made her decision. She knocked on the door, and when Elon looked up, his expression unreadable, Tasha took a deep breath. "I'm in," she said, her voice steady. "I'll take the leap." Elon's face broke into a grin. "I knew you would. Welcome aboard, Tasha." Tasha has made the choice to step into a new life, but will the challenges ahead prove to be too much for her? Is she really ready to leave her past behind? Or is she walking into the unknown with no way back? Tasha's first few days at Elon's company were a whirlwind. Everything was new. Strange faces, foreign concepts, and expectations she could barely wrap her mind around. The office was sleek, modern, a world apart from the dim alleyways and rundown buildings she was used to. She couldn't help but feel like an outsider, like she didn't belong. But there was no going back now. She had made her choice. Her mentor, a no-nonsense woman named Sarah, wasted no time in throwing Tasha into the deep end. She introduced her to the team, all of them smart, driven, and sharp. They didn't seem to have time for her doubts or insecurities. They were all about results, and Tasha had to prove herself, fast. "You've got potential, but you've got to learn fast," Sarah said during their first meeting. We don't have time for hand-holding here. You make mistakes, you own them. You step up, or you step aside. The pressure was intense. Tasha had never been in a professional environment like this before. The work was challenging, demanding, and required every ounce of focus she could muster. It was nothing like the streets where she learned to survive by relying on instincts and the hustle. Here, it was about strategy, innovation, and long-term goals. Every decision mattered. For the first time in her life, Tasha was forced to think beyond immediate gratification. She couldn't just take shortcuts. She couldn't rely on tricks or lying her way out of things. Everything was on the line, and she knew it. One afternoon, Tasha sat at her desk, staring at a complicated business proposal that Sarah had handed her. She had been working on it for hours, but it didn't make any sense. The numbers swam before her eyes, and the concepts seemed too distant to grasp. She was overwhelmed. A knock on her door startled her. It was Elon. "How's it going?" he asked, his usual calm demeanor present. He didn't seem like a man who was bothered by pressure, but then again, he had built a multi-billion-dollar empire from scratch. Tasha sighed, rubbing her temples. "I'm not sure I'm cut out for this," she admitted, feeling the weight of her insecurities pressing down on her. "I don't get it. The math, the language, the whole thing. It's like I'm speaking a different language." Elon sat down across from her, his eyes never leaving hers. "Tasha, I know you're used to fast solutions, but this is a long game. It's not about what you can do today. It's about what you can build for tomorrow. So, take a breath. It's okay not to have all the answers right away." He paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. "But here's what I do know. The person who makes it in this world isn't the one who never fails. It's the one who gets up after every failure and keeps pushing forward. You've got to decide. Are you going to give up, or are you going to keep fighting?" Tasha felt a shift in her chest, a stirring of something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Maybe it was the way Elon spoke, or maybe it was the realization that this was her chance. Her real chance. Not just to survive, but to thrive. She had to take it. She had to. As the days passed, Tasha's perspective began to change. She started staying late at the office, poring over the proposal, trying to understand the numbers and strategies. It wasn't easy. There were days when she felt like quitting, days when the pressure almost crushed her. But then she would remember what Elon had said, and she would keep going. Slowly but surely, the fog began to clear. The concepts she had struggled with started to make sense. She could see how everything fit together, how each decision had a ripple effect on the bigger picture. She wasn't just learning about business. She was learning how to think like a leader. And for the first time in her life, Tasha felt like she was doing something that mattered. One evening, Sarah called her into her office. "We've got a big pitch tomorrow," she said, her tone serious. "You're presenting." Tasha's heart skipped a beat. Presenting? In front of a room full of people? She hadn't even thought about that. The thought made her stomach turn. I don't know if I'm ready," she admitted, feeling the familiar panic rise inside her. Sarah gave her a sharp look. "You won't know until you try. You've got the numbers down. You've got the vision. Now you need to communicate it. That's the only way you're going to move forward." Tasha swallowed hard. The old fear, the one that had kept her from taking risks in the past, bubbled up inside her. But this time, she pushed it aside. She had come too far to back down now. "I'll do it," she said, surprising even herself with the steadiness in her voice. Tasha is about to face her biggest challenge yet. Will she rise to the occasion and prove that she belongs in this new world? Or will the pressure break her? What's next for her as she steps into the spotlight? The morning of the pitch arrived. Tasha barely slept the night before, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. What if she messed up? What if she froze in front of the room? But she knew there was no turning back. This was her moment. She arrived at the office early, the city still quiet, the streets just beginning to come to life. The glass walls of the building seemed to gleam under the rising sun, a reflection of everything she had worked so hard for. She was starting to believe that she could do this. She had to do this. Inside the conference room, the team was already gathered. Tasha felt her heart race as she walked in, 100 eyes turning to her. Elon was at the head of the table, his usual calm demeanor making him seem like the epitome of confidence. Sarah stood by his side, offering her a reassuring smile, but Tasha could see the pressure in her eyes as well. This was a big deal. "You're up, Tasha," Sarah said, nodding toward the projector screen. Tasha took a deep breath, stepping up to the podium. The room was silent, the only sound the soft hum of the air conditioning. She clicked the remote in her hand, and the first slide appeared on the screen. Her proposal. Her voice trembled at first, but she quickly gathered herself, remembering the lessons she had learned from the past few weeks. She was no longer the girl who had stolen wallets and run with the crowd. She was no longer the girl who relied on luck. She was better than that now. "This proposal is about more than just numbers," she began. "It's about the future. We're talking about investing in not just a product, but a vision that will revolutionize how we interact with technology, how we connect with each other, and how we reshape industries." As she spoke, Tasha could feel the tension in the room start to shift. She wasn't just presenting facts. She was telling a story. She was sharing a vision of something greater than herself, something that could change the world. Her words were flowing more easily now, the confidence she had been struggling to find beginning to take root. Elon was watching her closely, his gaze sharp but approving. She could see the faintest hint of a smile on his face, and it gave her the courage to keep going. "We have the data to back this up," she continued, clicking to the next slide, showing graphs and projections. "But what really sets us apart is the potential to make a real impact. This isn't just about profits. It's about building something that will last, something that will leave a legacy." As she spoke, she saw the reactions from the room, the nods of approval, the looks of intrigue. She could feel them leaning in, their attention focused on her. This was her moment. She was owning it. The presentation came to an end, and the room was silent for a moment. Tasha's heart was pounding in her chest. Had she done enough? Had she convinced them? Finally, Elon spoke. "That was impressive," he said, his voice calm but sincere. "You've captured the essence of what we're trying to do here. You've shown that you not only understand the numbers, but the bigger picture. That's exactly what we need." Tasha felt a surge of relief, her breath coming easier. She had done it. She had made it through the pitch. But there was more to come. The hardest part was still ahead, convincing them that she was more than just a one-time success. She had to prove she could sustain this, that she wasn't just a flash in the pan. Later that afternoon, after the pitch, Tasha found herself standing in the hallway, her mind racing. Elon approached her again, his hands casually in his pockets. "You did good today," he said, "but I want to see you keep pushing. This is just the beginning." Tasha nodded, her chest swelling with pride. "I won't let you down," she said, the words feeling more real than ever before. "I'm not that girl anymore." Elon raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed by her transformation. "I think you might just be ready to prove that. Just keep showing up, and keep proving it." Tasha has delivered a powerful pitch and earned Elon's respect, but this is just the beginning. What challenges will she face next as she continues her journey of transformation? Will she be able to keep up the momentum, or will her past catch up with her? Tasha sat in her apartment later that night, reflecting on the day. The pitch had gone better than she could have imagined, but she knew this was just the start of a much larger journey. Elon's words echoed in her mind, "Keep pushing, keep proving it." It was as if he could see through her, past the tough exterior she had built to survive, to the woman she was becoming. She'd come a long way since the days of running from trouble, from looking for an easy way out. That girl was gone now. But who was she now? She hadn't yet figured that out. She wasn't sure what kind of person she was supposed to be, not yet. But she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to be the kind of person who fell back into her old life. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. She glanced down to see a text from Sarah. "Sarah, great job today. We're all impressed. But you've got a big challenge ahead. We need to start building out the team for this project. You in?" Tasha smiled, her heart pounding with excitement. This was it, the real test. She had proven she could talk the talk, but now she had to walk the walk. Building a team, leading a project, this was the kind of responsibility she had never dreamed of taking on before. But now, it felt like she was ready for it. She replied quickly, Tasha, count me in. Let's do this. The next morning, Tasha arrived at the office early, determined to hit the ground running. She had no time to waste. The team was already starting to take shape, but she knew they needed more than just talent. They needed vision. They needed drive. And most of all, they needed someone who could lead. Sarah was already at her desk when Tasha arrived, looking over a series of resumes. I'm glad you're here. We've got a big decision to make. We need the right people on this team, and we can't afford to make mistakes. Tasha nodded, settling into the chair across from Sarah. I get it, but we need more than just qualifications on paper. We need people who understand the bigger picture, people who can see what this project is really about. It's about more than just making money. It's about changing the game. Sarah raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. I like that thinking. You're right. We need people who are willing to go the extra mile, not just clock in and out. They spent the next few hours going through resumes, discussing potential candidates. Tasha had a sharp eye for talent. She could tell who had the drive, who had the passion, and who was just looking for a paycheck. She wasn't going to settle for anything less than the best. When they finally narrowed it down to a small group of candidates, Tasha felt a sense of pride. She had helped make these tough decisions, and she could already feel the team beginning to come together. That afternoon, the team met for the first time. Tasha stood at the front of the room, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. This was it. This was her moment to show them what she was made of. She glanced at the people around the table, a mix of fresh faces and seasoned professionals. They were all here for one reason, to make this project a success. And Tasha was determined to lead them there. All right, let's get started, she said, her voice steady but firm. We're not just building a product, we're building a future. This is our chance to do something that matters. So let's get to work. She could see the determination in their eyes. These were people who were ready to work, ready to follow her lead. And for the first time, Tasha felt like she belonged in this world. But not everyone was happy about Tasha's new role. That night, she received an anonymous message on her phone. Message: you think you've changed? You're still the same girl who steals and lies. You can't escape your past. Tasha's heart sank as she read the message. She knew who it was from. It was one of the people from her old life, someone who couldn't stand seeing her succeed. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel the familiar pang of fear. She felt nothing. No anger, no regret, just a calm, quiet resolve. She deleted the message, setting her phone down. She had come too far to let her past drag her down again. She wasn't that person anymore. She was someone else now. Tasha has taken on the responsibility of building a new team and is beginning to step into her new role as a leader. But her past is never far behind, and the challenges ahead will test her resolve. Will she continue to rise above her past, or will the shadows of her old life catch up with her? Tasha woke up the next morning with a feeling of resolve that she hadn't felt in years. The night before, she had discarded the ghost of her past, an old message, an old enemy, and moved forward. But there was one thing she had learned in her short time at the top. When you climb, there's always someone waiting to pull you down. That thought lingered with her as she got dressed for the day. She was dressed for success. Sharp blazer, sleek boots, and the kind of confidence that came from being exactly where she needed to be, even if it didn't feel quite natural yet. She was still learning, still growing, but today she would prove she belonged. When Tasha walked into the office, the energy was different. The team was already hard at work. Ideas were being bounced around, discussions were lively, and for the first time, Tasha felt like she was a part of something bigger than herself. She glanced over to Sarah's desk. She had been unusually quiet lately, and Tasha couldn't help but wonder if Sarah was starting to doubt her decision to bring Tasha on board. It was understandable. Tasha was new to this world. She had her doubts too, but now, she had no choice but to make it work. Tasha walked over to Sarah's desk, trying to read her expression. "Hey, you good?" she asked, trying to keep her tone casual. Sarah looked up from the stack of papers. Her gaze was sharp, calculating, but there was something else in her eyes, a flicker of uncertainty. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind. We've got a tight deadline for the pitch presentation, and I'm just wondering if we have the right people in place." Tasha nodded, already starting to feel the pressure. She had heard whispers around the office, rumors that not everyone was on board with her taking the lead. But she couldn't let that stop her now. "We've got this," Tasha said, offering Sarah a small but confident smile. "I know the team. They're good. We're good." Sarah gave a tight-lipped smile, but the uncertainty was still there. "Let's hope you're right." The hours dragged on, each one heavier than the last. The clock was ticking toward the pitch meeting, and Tasha couldn't shake the feeling that this was her make-or-break moment. Every decision she made now could either propel the team to success or drag them down in failure. The weight of that responsibility sat heavily on her shoulders. As the team gathered for the final meeting before the pitch, Tasha looked around the room, assessing each face. This was her chance to show them that she belonged, to prove that she could lead. "All right, everyone," Tasha began, standing in front of the room. Her voice was steady, but inside, her heart was pounding. "We've worked hard to get to this point, but we're not done yet. This pitch is everything. We need to give it everything we've got." She paused, making eye contact with each person in the room. The silence was heavy, but it was the kind of silence that felt charged with potential. "I know it's been tough. We've faced doubts, setbacks, and challenges. But we're here, and we're ready. So let's make sure we leave everything we've got on that stage." Her words hung in the air for a moment before one of the team members, Marco, spoke up. "You're right, Tasha. We've got this." Everyone nodded in agreement, and for the first time since she'd started this job, Tasha felt like the team had her back. They were ready. The pitch went better than she could have imagined. She had never stood in front of a group of people like this, pitching an idea, trying to convince them to believe in her vision. But it felt natural. The nerves had faded, replaced by an adrenaline rush that fueled her every word. The team followed her lead, feeding off her energy, and by the end of the presentation, she knew they had won them over. But as they left the boardroom, Tasha couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The energy in the room was different, and when she glanced back at Sarah, she saw a flicker of something like disappointment. Later that evening, Sarah called her into her office. "Tasha," she said, her voice calm but direct, "I need to have a word with you." Tasha sat down, anxiety creeping up her spine. "What's going on?" Sarah leaned forward, looking at her with a sharp gaze. "You did a great job today. No one can deny that. But there's something I need to address. You're good, Tasha, really good. But this role, this responsibility, it's not just about delivering the results. It's about building trust. And you've got to understand that your past, the things you've done before all of this, it matters. People in this room are looking at you and wondering if you can really be trusted, if you can really deliver in the long run." Tasha's stomach tightened. She had known this was coming. She had known that no matter how far she came, her past would always be there, looming over her. "I know," Tasha replied, her voice steady despite the anxiety twisting inside of her. "But I'm not that person anymore. I've changed." Sarah stared at her for a long moment, and just as Tasha began to wonder if she would say something else, she spoke again. "You've got the skills, Tasha. You've got the drive. But you've got to prove to us, to everyone here, that you're in this for the long haul. And you can't run from your past forever. So, what are you going to do about it?" Tasha took a deep breath. This was it. This was her test. To show them, and herself, that she had what it took to stay in this game, to lead, and to prove that she was worthy of the trust they were putting in her. "I'm not running," she said, her voice low but firm. "I'm facing it, head on." Tasha has faced the challenge of leading the team through the pitch and come out victorious, but Sarah's words hang over her. Will Tasha be able to fully prove herself, despite the shadow of her past? How will she face the doubts of those around her and the lingering fears within herself? Tasha couldn't shake the conversation with Sarah. The weight of it lingered, heavy in her chest, clouding her thoughts. The team had celebrated after the successful pitch, but Tasha couldn't bring herself to join in. Her mind kept replaying Sarah's words, "You can't run from your past forever." She knew Sarah was right. No matter how much success she had now, no matter how many victories she racked up, her history still followed her like a shadow, whispering doubts into her ear. Tasha had spent so much time running from it, trying to bury it deep, hoping it would fade away on its own, But it wasn't that simple. Not anymore. She'd never wanted to go back to the streets, to the life she'd left behind. But sometimes, the pull was stronger than her resolve. The familiar faces, the easy temptation, it all called to her, like a siren's song. And yet, deep down, Tasha knew she couldn't return. Not after everything she'd built. Not after everything she'd fought for. The next morning, she found herself standing in front of her apartment, staring at her phone. There was a message from her old friend, Marcus. He'd been the one to pull her back into that world years ago. The one who'd always said, "It's not that bad, Tasha. We can make money, have fun, live easy." But that wasn't her life anymore. She had bigger dreams now, bigger goals. Still, a part of her hesitated. She clicked the message open. "Tasha, you still in? We need someone who knows how to handle things, you know? Just like old times. You won't regret it." Her finger hovered over the reply button. For a split second, she considered it. But then she stopped. No, not this time. She had fought too hard to let it all slip away. She typed back, "I'm out, Marcus. For good. This isn't my life anymore." She hit send before she could think twice about it. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Tasha kept herself busy with work, trying to push the feelings of doubt away. But no matter how hard she tried, the anxiety gnawed at her. Would she really be able to leave everything behind? Would she be strong enough? As evening fell, she decided to take a walk through the city, hoping the fresh air would clear her head. The lights of the city glimmered around her, but they didn't feel as bright as they once had. She'd never realized how dark the world could seem when you were standing on the edge of something. Her phone buzzed again. "Thought you were different. Thought you could make it. Guess I was wrong." It was Marcus. His message was sharp, filled with disappointment. Tasha clenched her jaw, fighting the sting of those words. She had done what she had to do, and if Marcus couldn't understand that, then he wasn't the person she needed in her life anymore. She was stronger than this, stronger than her past. But as she continued walking, the streets felt different. Her past was never far behind, and no matter how far she ran, there were moments when it felt like it was catching up. Tasha had made a decision. She couldn't keep pretending that her past didn't exist. And then, just as she was about to turn the corner to her building, she saw a familiar face. It was Sarah, standing by a cafe on the corner, watching her. Tasha froze. She hadn't expected to see Sarah here. What did she want? Sarah approached her slowly, her expression unreadable. "I know what you're thinking," Sarah said, her voice calm. "It's tempting, isn't it? To slip back into that life where things were easier, where you didn't have to fight so hard for every little win. I've been there, Tasha. I know that feeling of wanting to give up, to let go of everything you've worked for." Tasha looked at her, unsure of what to say. She had never imagined Sarah would understand. Sarah had come from a different world, one that didn't involve the streets, the lies, and the constant struggle. "I'm not giving up," Tasha finally said, her voice firm. "But sometimes, it feels like it would be easier. Like I don't belong in this world. Like I'm just waiting for everything to fall apart." Sarah nodded, her gaze softening. "You belong here. And I know it's hard. But you have to trust yourself, Tasha. You've already made it this far. You don't have to be that person anymore." Tasha's eyes began to well up, the emotion she kept bottled up for so long starting to break through. She had fought for this life. She had earned it. But why did it feel like it was slipping through her fingers? "You can do this," Sarah continued, stepping closer. "But you have to trust yourself. You have to let go of the fear that's holding you back. You're not defined by your past. You're defined by who you choose to be now." Tasha closed her eyes for a moment, letting Sarah's words sink in. This wasn't over. Not yet. She wasn't going to let fear win. Not now. Not ever. Tasha is standing at a crossroads, torn between the life she's worked so hard to leave behind and the new life she's building. With Sarah's encouragement, can Tasha overcome her past and truly move forward? Will she let go of the fear that's been holding her back, or will it pull her back into a world she's desperate to escape? Tasha stood at the edge of the sidewalk, her eyes tracing the neon lights that reflected off the puddles below, each one shimmering with the weight of her thoughts. Sarah's words had struck a chord deep within her. Could she truly leave behind everything that had once felt so familiar? Was she strong enough to step fully into this new life she'd started to build? Without looking back, the temptation still lingered. She could feel it in the pit of her stomach. The world she'd left behind, with its easy escapes and quick fixes, was always there, just a phone call or a familiar face away. But that world wasn't hers anymore. She had to remind herself of that. She took a deep breath and turned to face Sarah, who was still standing across from her, waiting patiently, like she knew the answer before Tasha did. "I'm scared," Tasha admitted, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "I've been running so long, pretending like I've got everything figured out. But inside, I'm still that girl. The one who couldn't trust anyone. The one who thought she was nothing." Sarah nodded, her expression soft and understanding. "You're not that girl anymore. You've made it out. You're building something real now. But it's not about forgetting where you came from. It's about understanding that you don't have to stay there." Tasha closed her eyes, letting the weight of those words settle on her. She had spent so long being ashamed of her past, like it was a scar that could never heal. But maybe, just maybe, it was part of her story. A story that didn't have to define her, but that could shape her future. Later that evening, Tasha sat in her small apartment, the city lights glowing through her window. She had finally done it. She had turned down Marcus's offer, for good this time. It wasn't easy. It had taken everything she had to stand firm, to choose this path. But she had done it. And as much as she feared the unknown, she was finally ready to embrace it. The next morning, she walked into the office with a renewed sense of purpose. Sarah was waiting for her at the door, a knowing smile on her face. "You did it," Sarah said, as Tasha walked in. "I did," Tasha replied, her voice steady but full of emotion. "It's not going to be easy, but I'm doing it." Sarah clapped her hands together, her smile wide. "That's the spirit. Now, let's make the future happen." The weeks that followed were filled with new challenges, but Tasha faced them with a resilience she had never known she had. The past was always there, lurking in the back of her mind, but she had learned how to navigate it without letting it control her. And each day, she felt herself grow stronger. It wasn't always smooth sailing. There were moments of doubt, times when she wanted to give in to the comfort of her old life. But Sarah's words always echoed in her mind. "You're not defined by your past. You're defined by who you choose to be now." And every time that doubt crept in, Tasha pushed it aside, choosing to take another step forward, to build something bigger than herself. One day, as Tasha sat in a meeting with the team, discussing a new strategy, she felt a sudden surge of gratitude. This was what it felt like to truly live, without fear, without regret, and without the weight of the past dragging her down. She was creating something real, something that mattered. And then, as if on cue, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Marcus. "You still think you can do this? You're nothing without us. You'll always be one of us." Tasha stared at the message for a long moment. For a brief second, she thought about responding, about proving him wrong. But she didn't. Instead, she set her phone down and looked around at the people in the room with her. These were the people who believed in her. These were the people who were helping her create something meaningful. "I don't need that anymore," she whispered to herself. She took a deep breath and smiled. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she was excited about it. Tasha has made the choice to fully leave her past behind and step into the future she's worked so hard to build. But will she truly be able to leave everything behind? Or will the past come back to haunt her? Will the people who once knew her still try to pull her back? What do you think? Is Tasha ready to embrace her new life? Or will the weight of her past catch up with her? Share your thoughts and keep following Tasha's journey as she fights for